For people who don't know, Monkee just released a book, like laying out all of this whole story and your journey through running Unity, and then your new venture with Epic. And yeah, it's a really interesting book. Really, like, so much good information that I think so many people need. I think it's a book that every person in like the hip hop community and just anyone in general who's interested in like entrepreneurship and running something or starting something themselves should read. Like, it's
Oh man, thanks for saying. I mean, honestly, I'm curious to hear like your thoughts now that you've had a chance to check it out. I mean, I spent so much of my life. I got it right here. I've spent like so much of my life like friggin' everywhere. These books in my house,
yeah,
but like poorly. It's really like a journal, you know. Like I wrote
yeah,
a journal for 15 years of my life and
hmm,
decided to put that into the format of a book. It's not really like a
hmm,
traditional,
yeah,
book in that sense, but I think that's the beauty of it is just it's sharing my personal life and my experiences the way that I experience them. Not to say that
hmm,
that's how everyone experienced them.
hmm,
I did do a lot of fact checking. Like I asked people for permission and like asked them to read stories that involved them and said like, hey, do you want to like tweak this in any way? Are there any parts that I'm missing from your perspective? Like I really spent a lot of time doing that. I'm sure there's some stuff in there that isn't 100%, but like I think that's the beauty of it is that it's just a part of my life. It's
hmm,
it's a sort of a snapshot of the way that I look at the world, the way I look at breaking in terms of like creativity on in breaking, and when I'm like doing power combos and trying to piece ideas together. It's like I look at the same thing when I'm building relationships to try to create a nonprofit or a
hmm,
social idea that I haven't seen before, and use
hmm,
those same skills of I don't know, making things up as I go along and breaking and like finding the momentum when I'm falling and catching myself and just being like, oh, I'm here, cool. I know what I can do in this position, and oh,
hmm,
I'm here now. I know what I can do in that position. And it's the same. Like I go to a funder and try to pitch to them, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I know how to talk to people to some extent. Like I have like enough confidence to say, okay, I can have a conversation with you and kind of guess what it would I'd have to do to pitch someone. So then I go into that mode, like, what do I need to do to sort of creatively get to the place that I want to get by the end of this conversation,
hmm,
or several conversations. And I kind of look at it similarly. I'm like, cool,
hmm,
this one's a challenging one. Like
hmm,
they told me I have 5 minutes, and they don't look like they want me to be in their space. So I got to really sort of adapt and appeal to that particular interest. And maybe I won't. Maybe they'll kick me out of their office, or
hmm,
but I think that's the fun of it all. Like facing challenges in breaking, in life,
hmm,
etc. But yeah, so I try to like parallel some of those things because I don't think breaking lives in isolation
yeah.
personally. Like I think it's connected to the wider world.
Yeah, and that's like one of the big parts. There's a lot that you put in there, but that's like, you know, maybe it's just because like I'm coming from that same perspective of like breaking is like one of your core things, right? And so it sort of like permeates into the rest of your life in some ways. But I think you did it. You put it really well, like laid it out with like someone who's not even a dancer or involved in hip hop or whatever. It's like you get a bit of that primer of what hip hop is, and then you see how it can connect to these other things. And so as someone who might have never seen it or know what hip hop's about, they get a bit of that, and then they see how it's connected to this other stuff. And then people who are involved in dance and hip hop, they can see it and be like, oh yeah, all these things that I've learned in hip hop or breaking or whatever, I can use that to like help grow other aspects of my life or something like that, which I thought was really good. You have like stuff about the crew and how you perceive the crew and how that's like you perceive your team in in the way you work and stuff like that, how you treat people, how you make decisions and things like that. It's really good, I thought.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I think, and I encourage people to think of things multidimensionally. Like, it's not just like, if you're a chef or if you're like, I've seen a lot of dancers who are really amazing cooks. I'm not one of them, but for people who know me or have known some of my escapades with cooking, they'll know that does not apply for me. But
Hmm.
I do think that there's something to be said about like sort of these parallel tracks in the things that we do in life. How we treat other people, how we, you know, uh, work in the business world, how we work in any situation. It really parallels across all facets. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I think like the business world and corporate stuff needs a bit of shaking up, and like we don't always treat people like in a humane way. And
Hmm.
I tried to challenge that, like in the sense of creating a workplace where it didn't feel like we were at work,
Hmm.
at least for me. And I would be very like silly and just kind of myself, and try to encourage people to do the same thing. Like, just come to work however you feel comfortable, and
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't have like a funny animal shirt on right now.
I know I chose to wear the Winter today to
Yeah,
rep,
but that's
you know.
another part of you that's like you got to represent that too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Trust me, I debated it. I'm like, it's either a dinosaur shirt or like something with a fox on it, or like MEC Winter type of thing.
Yeah.
But the crew always takes the cake when it comes to stuff like this. I gotta
Hmm.
I gotta represent, and
Hmm.
that's also part of it. Like
Hmm.
the way I treat my friends, the way I treat I'm part of the crew and that connection. How can I bring that into the my work life? How, because I spend a lot of time at work, so why do I have to try to pretend to be someone else? Um,
Yeah.
so many of us do, right? Like, we're just like, okay, we put on that work face. It's like,
Hmm.
well, how do I create an environment where I can bring myself to those different spaces? And it's hard to do because a lot of people don't accept that, right? It's just they it's like, this is how you are at work, and this is how you are with your family, and this is how you are
Yeah.
breaking, and
Yeah.
they're different worlds,
Hmm.
and I blend them together, and sometimes well, I generally blend them together, like, to be honest.
Yeah, like you're Mikey everywhere. You're the same guy everywhere.
Yeah, and some people don't like that, like, some
Hmm.
people don't like that. They want to see something else, or they want to see me act a certain way or wear a certain thing, or like, even before in breaking, it's funny, we talked about what I'm wearing. Like, I used to dress like a complete like fool. Like, I just wore just the same pair of, like, I was like a Bart Simpson. Like, I wore the same pair of cargo pants, brown cargo pants, when I was a kid. And then like MEC was like, no, like, can't dress like that, the breaking scene. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm winning all these battles. Who cares what I'm wearing? And they're like, you're gonna start losing because people judge your clothes. I'm like, what? So, anyways, I got some new, some new shoes, and cleaned up my act a little bit. But still, I make fun of that and wear the dinosaur T-shirts because, like, they know that that's me, and
Yeah.
I don't really care. If people don't like me for who
Yeah.
I am, then that's probably their problem. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
um, I used to like smile in battles. Like, I would stick my tongue out at people, and they're just like, "What are you doing? Stop it! It's weird." Like, I'm just being myself. Deal with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. 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 That actually reminds me of like this story that Mark told me one time, just about the way you dress and this kind of thing. And it's like this random thing where he was at some jam, and I think track two was judging, and like after they did their battle, they were outside, and track two came up to him and was like, "Yo, when I saw you, I thought you were like some accountant or something like that," because he was wearing this like collared shirt and something like that. And then Mark's style, he just like flips around and does whatever the hell he wants. But yeah, it's like you know sometimes that can work for you because people they see maybe this like, oh, he's got this like goofy shirt on, or he's like, he doesn't look like a b-boy or whatever, and that can kind of help you in some ways, like breaking people's expectations and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think I learned that from my pops. Like, he
Uh-huh.
like he just acts like himself, but like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think that like lowers people's guards a little bit because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this guy's an idiot. Like, and then I'm like, oh yeah, and then you just
Yeah, yeah,
cool, you know, like you
yeah,
show them how you do it. And
yeah.
I think that's the thing is like I come with all the practice to prove what I'm
Mm-hmm.
there to prove on the dance floor or wherever or in
Yeah.
fundraising or the program stuff. But I don't try to fake the funk and be some like
Mm-hmm.
corporate
Mm-hmm.
business guy. And I think it does. It people kind of like, well, this guy's a fool. Like, what is he doing here? And then
Yeah.
uh, in some cases that does, I guess, probably work to the advantage. You know,
Yeah, maybe
I don't
sometimes.
do that like conniving. I'm not like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I wear a stupid shirt so people don't take me seriously. You know,
Yeah.
but it does have an effect. You know, people don't they get intimidated or
Mm-hmm.
whatever if you come too slick with things. So
Yeah. But I really like that aspect because you mentioned it a lot in the book that like if people don't accept you for who you are and how you are, then maybe like they're not the person to work with. They don't their Your values don't match up, and so even if they're like a big funder or something like that, if the values don't match up, maybe that's the wrong. It's just not a good person to work with, or it's not going to be a long term like thing if they were to fund you. Like,
same as yeah, and I think it applies really well to crews too, right? Like you think
mm-hmm,
of some people who are like, oh, that why is that person acting that way? They're like, oh, they're part of that crew, you know, or like, and that can be a good thing, and that can also
mm-hmm,
be, a negative thing too. And I think that's the interesting thing about it is, at least with MEC, and which is why I've never really changed crews or been affiliated with others, is because like we have that connection in the way that we operate in our, I guess, in our values,
mm-hmm,
and, Andel and Nastic and, even guys like Mstro and Switch and the old school, like MEC is a complicated crew because we have like a whole generation from that no longer breaks. And there's
mm-hmm.
a whole generation that's current. And I was kind of a bridge in between both of those two crews. But ultimately, like especially the current gen, like I have that connection to them, and similarly with my team when I was at Unity, and similarly with the people I try to surround myself with. And it's not 100%. Like there's always like someone in the group that you're sort of bringing along, or they're learning something and you're learning something. And it's not to say that people are perfectly aligned, even if
Mm-hmm.
they're in a crew or even if they're in like a company, but it's about sort of moving with people who you don't have to think twice if they have your back. And I think that's kind of the funny thing about um, companies, crews, friends, people you choose to associate with. If like, at least for me, if like I am not 100% confident that they, would say the same thing in front of me that they would behind my back, that they would, in any other context, then to me, I don't want to really, I just don't gravitate to people that I
Mm-hmm.
believe are sort of scheming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
because you can get to the final outcome with people who are. I'm not saying people who are like me, but people who um, can trust, each other. And if there's that lack of trust, then like I kind of like what's the agenda? Like people who I ask what's the agenda, I'm like, well, what do you want out of this? I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I'm just here, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to exist amongst other humans. And if we can coexist, then dope. And
Yeah.
if people are like sort of underlying motivations that they're trying to sort of gain something from being connected to Unity or to me or the crew in some way, and they're not just authentically just there because, it
Mm-hmm.
resonates and they're connected to it, then I'm like, okay, it might not be the right time. You know what I'm saying?
Now really vibe.